our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The OUTA Hour, where your voice matters.
Hello, how's it? Dumelang, Sanibonan, Moeni, Abusheni. There are a whole lot more, but we'll stick with that and go with the how's it. Welcome to the OUTA Hour. Good to have you with me. I'm Tom London with you for the next 60 minutes with the OUTA team tonight. Have a look. They're standing by. Wayne Duvenage will join us halfway through the show, but there's Andre Jennings, Brendan Slade, and advocate Stefanie Fick, everybody's favorite advocate, on screen tonight to talk about, well, we'll be chatting about why legal costs are so expensive. How expensive is it to fight a case? You know, OUTA is busy arguing the AARTO case, and we've been updating you on the developments. But let's dig into the costs, shall we, and find out what it costs to take a case to the High Court in this country, or the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Constitutional Court. How much money is involved in that? Andre Jennings and Stefanie Fick are on board to give us the lowdown. Brendan Slade, Legal Project Manager at OUTA, has been digging into the National Lotteries Commission, and he'll tell us what the link is between ocean baskets and the lottery. It's sure to be fascinating. And then we'll end the show with Wayne Duvenage, the CEO of OUTA, who last week convened a business breakfast, the first in a series titled On the Road to 2024. And as usual, at the beginning of the show, we say hello to you. So pop your comments in the comment section down below this video. If you're in YouTube, Head of Comms and Marketing, Samantha van Ispen, is taking care of you this evening. In the Facebook feed, Masego Motswaneng will be dealing with you. So say hello to Masego. And the show is produced by Stefanie Davids. Let's get the conversation started. Don't forget, the comment section down below is where all the action happens amongst the viewers. So get to know each other. Say hello to each other, and say hello to your moderator, and let's get some conversation going. As always, we look for your comments and questions and put them to our guests. I can't really call them guests. They're team members on the show, far from guests. Not sure if we really ever have any guests on the show. Everyone's a friend, including you. So we'll get to your hellos in a moment, but let's say hello to the team on air tonight, and let's start with... who should we start with? Should we start with advocate Stefanie Fick? Let's go with Stefanie. Hello, Stefanie.
How's it, Tom? How's it, everybody?
Yeah,
I think it's
good. Thank you.
I think this is going to be a fun show tonight.
I'm looking forward to it.
Some interesting topics. So I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to all the comments.
Me too. Let's say hello to Andre Jennings.
Someone could ask us a question we don't have the answer.
Hold on. What do you want? You want a question you don't have the answer to?
Let's see.
I guess that's a challenge.
Oh.
All right. You've been challenged by the good advocate. Have you got a question for Stefanie Fick or Andre Jennings that they can't answer? It's not won't answer, by the way. It's can't answer. Okay. Pop it in the comment section down below this video. Let's say hello to Andre Jennings now. Hello, Andre.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Tom. Nice to be back again.
It's good to have you with us, and can't wait for you to explain to me what bills of cost and taxation means. I've got no idea. So we'll be posing the legal questions to you this evening. Talking about legal project manager at OUTA, Brendan Slade joins us on the line, and he is going to be chatting to us about the NLC and ocean baskets. Hello, Brendan.
How's it, Tom? Hi, all the supporters out there. No load shedding tonight. Let's rock this.
Lekker, let's rock and roll. We start off with our chief whip. Who is the chief whip tonight? It's the usual suspect. It's Claire Feldman. Chief whip this evening. Yuri Fick says hello from Cape Town. Fikile Dada is on board, and Fikile says good evening, everybody. Brendan Slade is on your screen. He's also down below in the comments section. Olivia Hossel says good evening, Team OUTA. Happy to see you all again. Like and share this video, please. Stefanie Fick in the comment section on your screen, as well as Andre Jennings, so you can chat to them in the comment section too. Hilda Mayer says hello, OUTA. Stefanie Davids, the show's producer, is on board. Who else have we got here? They're climbing on thick and fast now. Carl Edwards is on board. Why is it so hard to hold judges accountable? There's a question that they may not be able to answer, but we'll find out. Ben Fraser is on board. Carl Edwards is on board, and more will join us over the next 60 minutes. Do say hello to us when you come into the comment section. If it's your first time viewing the show, then tell us you're a first-time viewer. Tell us where you're from so we can do a proper hello to you. Let's start off this conversation with the Bill of Cost and AARTO, which is almost Greek to me, so we need some lawyers to decipher and decode this. We start off with legal cases and the cost of legal cases, and ask Advocate Stefanie Fick to give us some examples of how much legal cases have cost OUTA. What kind of money is involved, Stefanie?
It is a lot. The Dudu Manyeni case was, a few million. And it is because it took so long. So when we decided to do this litigation, we firstly make provision for it. So we are ready to do whatever is necessary, because government has got, sometimes this view that let's drag it out. Let's see if people run out of money, and then they can push the litigants out. So firstly, we do not just litigate because we can. We really think about it, and we really target the cases where we think will have an impact, not just for a small group of people, but will really have an impact on South Africa. But legal bills are costly because you talk about attorney's fees. Now, I'm going to, just to show an example, because the duties between attorneys and advocates has become, so integrated. In the past, it was, there was a lot of separation, but it has become so integrated. But be that as it may, normally the attorney is really responsible for making sure that the paperwork is done. In other words, making sure that the case goes smoothly, does all the, like I said, paperwork, the admin, making sure that papers are filed. But attorneys can also be very valuable because they have a lot of experience in some of these matters. So they bring also arguments to the table. And then you have your advocates that, normally they're responsible for drafting the paper. So as a team, they are invaluable to when you sit down and it's a strategy. Litigation is not just I'm going to file a paper and file my notice of intention to oppose. There's some strategy behind it, and all of that costs money. I think sometimes the legal profession has got a bad rap because it tends to be expensive. You do have attorneys and advocates that overcharge, but generally, I think they supposed to do what they charge. They don't charge more, for example, than you would pay for an auditor or architect or whatever. But very importantly, what OUTA decided way in the beginning is instead of paying enormous amount of money. Ask Wayne when he comes on the show how much they paid just for making copies of the ETOL case when they started that way in the beginning. Can be very costly. But we decided, we need to spend our money wisely. We need to spend our money very strategically. And we decided to go for smaller firms. And I think it really, really worked out very well. So, you have a closer relationship. You don't pay the Santon top 5 firms an enormous amount of money. We keep it small and we work hard, and that's how we also reduce fees, because some of the stuff we do ourselves and we sort of save a little bit of money. So in a nutshell, litigation is expensive.
All right. How much? How expensive? Is it hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands? Can it run into the millions? Really?
Dudu was, I can't even remember how much Dudu was, because it, thank goodness, it's drips and drabs. But you're talking about, I think it ended up being 6-7 million.
It's a huge amount of money to argue a case, and I'm just wondering, how do you recoup these costs?
So that is part of the tax bill of costs. So in civil cases, they haven't passed the law that you can sort of claim in criminal cases, but in civil cases normally, the winner get costs. In other words, the other side will pay them costs. So there's different scales. I think Andries may be better to say that you get the normal party scale. In other words, there are published amounts that you can charge for everything you did. So if you read certain documents, if you file certain, if you make copies, and then there's certain fees that the advocates can claim. I'm not the expert, but then you get, for example, the punitive costs, where you can where an attorney needs to. I think that's where an attorney has to pay all the costs. The client has to pay all the other parties' costs. So, but in any case, so if you are the winner, normally costs follow a win. So sometimes you get some of your funds back, sometimes you get all your funds back. But yeah, I'm going to let Henri explain that better, because that is a way of recouping some of the money that you spend on your litigation. You can recoup back.
Well, let's ask Henri Jennings that same question. How do you recoup costs, Henri?
So the taxing of bills of costs is a but different than the normal day-to-day running and working of attorneys, as Stefanie has explained already. We now all legal practitioners, we know there's no longer a distinction since the inception of the Legal Practice Act in 2018. And it's not just as simple as going to court with the invoice that the client received from the attorney and giving it to the taxing master for an endorsement. The taxing master is a registrar of the court dealing with taxations when we're dealing with the High Court. And then in the magistrate's court, it's a clerk of the court that has the authority and the knowledge to consider these bills of cost. But as I said, it's not just a matter of going with the invoice that you received and then the allocator, which is the quantification of the amount that should be paid by the other party that now lost their litigation, is now quantified and they have to pay that amount. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in that way. There is a process that needs to be followed to ensure that the amount that is at the end payable by the losing party or the party that has been or that has received a cost or against them is just and equitable, and those amounts are then taxed in front of a taxing master. Now, please bear in mind, taxations are part of our normal litigation process in the court, so the parties are still able to settle it between themselves if they can come to a lump sum amount that both parties are satisfied with. And for instance, in the Pretoria High Court, where the bulk of our litigation in South Africa happens, our taxation dates for matters that are ripe for applying for a date for taxation is now only being allocated for September of next year. So there's quite a wait from when you receive your winning judgment to when your bill of cost is actually taxed by a taxing master, and then you are able to actually try and recover those costs. So as Stefanie also said, and you also mentioned that, Tom, earlier, is that the taxations are also different in the different courts. The lower are creatures of statute, which means that they are statutorily bound by the act that regulates that specific court. So, for instance, the Magistrates Court Act, there's a specific section that regulates the amounts applicable, and I'll come back to that point. The same in the High Court. It's Rule 70 is the part of the Uniform Rules of Court that regulates taxation of cost. And as I said, the Magistrates Court, there's a bit more structure, and the taxing master doesn't have any leeway. Whereas in the High Court, there is something we call the taxing master's discretion that they must apply. So they must apply their mind when they're considering a bill of cost. And there's obviously, court cases and precedents that give them direction in terms of the decisions and the rulings that they make. And that is also what we, as cost consultants, as we are known in practice, does is we bring these arguments with these precedents to the taxing master and say, this is what happened in this court, this is what happened in this court. And we also use the rulings from that specific court to advance our own argument. So, for instance, Stefanie also mentioned, various councils ask various fees, and that is directly applicable to their level of expertise, the difficulty of the matter involved, the volume of the papers involved in the procedure, and so forth.
Sounds quite complex.
It is, and what's interesting is that until very recently, the only persons that were able to appear before a taxing master in the High Court was an attorney that had a right of appearance. Now, this is not something that you automatically get. You have to actually apply to the Chief Registrar of the applicable court for right of appearance certificate. It's not the same with advocates. The moment an advocate is admitted as an advocate of that court, they automatically get the right to appear in the court before tax or before judges. But the same is not applicable to attorneys. Now, yes.
I'm just, you use the word taxation.
Yes.
Is that the way we understand taxation as lay persons?
No, I don't think so. Once someone hears the word tax, they automatically think SARS.
SARS, yeah.
So taxation in our terms is basically the quantification of the legal costs that a party needs to pay in terms of a cost order that was granted against them. So it's not the exact same thing, no, unfortunately not.
What you got another point you want to make? I see you got something else on your mind.
Yes,
Go for it.
I just want to, so until very recently, the only persons that were able to appear before a taxing master was actually someone with right of appearance. But then there was a judgment recently from the Johannesburg High Court wherein this position was actually changed by a judge making a decision saying that an attorney may appear before a taxing master, but I don't think it's going to end there. I think that this decision from the Johannesburg High Court will be taken to a higher court for further discussion on that point.
So what's the biggest bill of cost you've worked with?
So the biggest bill of cost that I taxed was various cost orders that was granted in favor of my client. And the aggregate of the cost order that we taxed at the end of the day was 6.14 million against an individual.
These cases are incredibly expensive, Stefanie. I mean, bringing justice, or we talk about the wheels of justice turning, but turning slowly, but turning. I mean, obviously the grease is the money.
Yeah, I think Brendan has put it there in the in the chat box. Is that government specifically? And I'm just thinking of our esteemed public protector, how much money she used to fund her cases, and how many of her cases was really, in terms of merits, if you really think about it, was worth it. I mean, when one of the public protectors, I think he's a legal manager or something, when he was testifying, he said that some of her legal bills were she paid. I mean, Dali and Paul forgot something like 12 million something, and the attorney got an enormous amount of money, but she got the bill of cost against her. So she, in her private capacity, had to pay, in the Concord, had to pay certain costs. Now, she asked for a legal opinion. Now, the cost that she had to pay was 200,000. The legal opinion she got to ask, but can I fight this? Should I pay it? Was more than that. So that's how the state can waste money on legal costs.
Who qualifies for that? I mean, who in government? Is it a blanket thing if you work for government, or do you have to hold a certain position in government before you qualify for state attorneys or the state-sponsored attorneys? How does that work?
You see, if you are an official and you get into legal troubles because of the position you fulfill. So let's say, for example, let's take Tudi Manonsela when she was still public protector.
Yeah.
When she, with her report on Nkandla. Now, it just sits right with you that when former President Zuma took her to court, she can't fight that with her own money. She couldn't fight that report with her own money. She made a decision as the public protector. That's why people in these positions need to be chosen very carefully, and they have an enormous duty, not just towards towards us, which is a big duty, but towards the Constitution and their constitutional duties. So you can see the difference. Someone that's abusing their position because, as an incumbent of an office, one cannot expect you to, with your own money, defend some of your choices. But then you get a person in an office that's abusing that is just totally going off the rails and spend taxpayers' money. And that's why the court has said some of that money she needs to pay for herself because, defending it and opposing certain things and just taking it on review after review and appeal, and it's just ridiculous. I don't know why we struggle.
Well, you see, Johan Elof has this to say. He says, whenever there's a legal case, the only ones winning are the lawyers. And I want to jump on that point and ask you, how much, I can only imagine how much money government spends on legal fees on a yearly basis. I think it was a year or two ago that we were looking at payouts in the health department that were in the hundreds of millions a year, and the legal costs attached to that were huge. Do we spend, in your opinion, a huge or disproportionate amount of money on state attorneys and state legal costs?
I do think so. I mean, we have a project with Asevela where what we wanted to look at is if someone gets arrested, you can sue for unlawful arrest. So you sue the police for unlawful arrest and you can get some money back. But that amounts, if you go look at the annual reports, that amounts just got way out of hand. I mean, when I was still in the National Prosecuting Authority, we used to joke that the amount of money that gets paid out because people are just get arrested for unlawful arrests, they can claim that money back from, for example, the policeman that acted, unlawfully. I'm not talking about someone that really thought, we're not talking about someone that arrested someone and then someone was found not guilty. We're talking about unlawful arrest. You can claim it back. But we couldn't really find where the state claims is back. You see, it is, I think it's just easy for them to spend the money. And I also think that, again, it's about leadership and it's about holding to account. It's about making sure that we do what we're supposed to do. And leadership, I really think it's so easy when money is available. And that's how they waste our taxpayers'
and that
money.
leads to my next question, which is, is it then entirely possible for the state to out-litigate people who want to challenge them in court, especially if you don't have a lot of money behind you to fight a case? You see something wrong, you want to go to court, you want to hold someone accountable, but at the end of the day, you've got to have millions and millions and millions of rands available. And the states, I'm going to use the word unlimited because it seems like that at times.
Yeah, it does seem that it's unlimited, and then they outsource some of the work to SCs that charge us an enormous amount of money per day. I really think that there's a lot of people that out there just can't be part of a process, because I can sit here and tell you that there's certain things, I can advise you to do it yourself. Don't be intimidated, but there's an intimidation tactic. They throw money around, and we are all scared. Everybody that is not sort of part of the system is scared because you don't know the system. It's like, if I go take my car to a mechanic, I mean, I have heart palpitations because this guy can tell me anything and I will have to believe him because I have no clue. So the same for ordinary people in a court. I may say, but go to court and defend yourself. A magistrate is a person like you, just needs to listen to the facts. Civil litigation, I don't think I'll share my opinion on civil litigation, but civil litigation is more difficult because there's time periods and, if you do this and this, and who has got time? So it is, I think they catch people because who's got time to go sit at a court, figure this out? You're not going to get into trouble at work, that stuff. People just don't. And then attorneys and advocates are unfortunately, expensive if you keep in mind that it's per hour normally, and
paying
it's not
for
just
time.
1 hour.
Yeah, and you're paying for multiple
it
team
takes
members' time.
time.
So Yulin Chetty had a comment that he popped up on. Or Yulin popped this comment up. State versus Zuma 2. Unreal why taxpayers have to fund his litigation as an ex-president. Worst pay his salary when he is in jail. How much of our former president's legal costs are paid for by the state?
I think that he is, if I'm not mistaken, he's the corruption case now. I think the court has said he must fund his own bills because being charged with corruption, you can't commit corruption on behalf of government. For example, the public protector can defend her report that she had to do in her normal course of business, but you can't commit corruption on behalf of South Africa. So in that instance, it's clearer that why should government pay for his legal costs?
So there's a lot riding on the bill of cost and the tax, as you call it, the taxation in our courts. I mean, a lot swings. That's got to influence things a lot. How much lawfare you've got on your side and whether you can see the thing through. What happens once this bill of cost has been taxed, as you put it, Andre?
So what happens is as soon as a bill of cost has been taxed, it becomes a court order, and that's a civil judgment. Sorry, guys. That's a civil judgment that is valid for 30 years. So what normally happens is we demand payment. We demand payment from the debtor that's liable to pay, and then if they refuse to make the payment within 7 days, which is the standard time period, then we issue a writ of execution or a warrant of execution, depending on in which court we are, and then we send that to the sheriff to try and attach. Firstly, they have to attach movable assets, and if they can't find any movable assets, then it goes into we have to attach immovable assets like property. And only then, if an immovable property is attached, then that's an entire another process that's enshrined in the court. And as to
is it difficult? Is it difficult to get the money back?
It is, especially if you have someone that ducks and dives, because for you to get a nulla bona return of service from the sheriff, which effectively says no goods found, you have to personally serve it on the person to say there is no movable assets that I can attach. So it's definitely not an easy process. But if you can get past that, if you can get to a nulla bona, for instance, where a person has a property, then you can move into sequestration and liquidation applications. And then it becomes the obligation of the trustees that are appointed by the master of the High Court to ensure that entire estate is liquidated and that the creditors are paid in accordance. But it is a difficult process. I mean, I've got costs. Yes.
And what happens if the SIU want those assets as well?
Well, there's obviously rankings as to who has judgment against the person, because then you become a preference creditor. But remember, SARS is always first in line, because they have statute to back them.
Okay.
So SARS is always first in line, and then comes the preference creditors, and then it becomes a whole mess of a thing about concurrent creditors, and sometimes then people just have to walk away, and it has unfortunately happened happened in the past for people to walk away as well. Yes.
Here's a question from Abin. Abin says, what about the legal meandering? And he's singling out Dali and Mpofu, but I think most advocates could be singled out for legal meandering when defending cases in South Africa. We've got a lot of examples of what Abin calls legal meandering. So if you're dragging, if you're trying to drag this case out as long as possible using what we now all know as Stalingrad tactics, Abin wants to know, how does that work? They resign, they back, a case can be dragged out. Does that affect costs orders at all?
It can. It can, from my point of view. So let me answer from this point of view, and then Andre can answer from a cost point of view. It depends. It really depends on who your judge is, who your magistrate is. The presiding officer, the type of procedure you are busy with. In a criminal case, for example, there's rights in terms of the Constitution that attaches to an accused. For example, you have a right to a speedy trial, you have to have a right to a fair trial, all of that. So that type of matters can't be postponed without proper reasons. Every time a criminal matter gets postponed, a magistrate must apply their minds to, is it in the best interest? And the state also has got an interest, because the state is sort of presenting the public at large. And you know what? Time does not do any favors to witness testimony. So a court always, when it comes to postponement, manages or try and manage the different rights. So criminal matters, the meandering, at some point the magistrate can just put his foot down. An advocate can be found guilty of, misconduct, in the sense that, let me be very careful, but you can make yourself guilty of contempt of court. But normally, an advocate or an attorney, it's now the Legal Practice Council. We have certain rules and regulations that you have to abide by. And an advocate, for example, has got a duty towards his client, a duty towards the court. And those two duties needs to be balanced, very well. In civil matters, you have a sort of a bit of different rules that apply. And to put it bluntly, and I'm saying it from a more criminal point of view, is that in civil matters, money talks. So if you can say to someone, listen, I want a postponement, I'm willing to pay for costs, the chances of a judge saying no is slim to none. Wow. It is about the parties coming to some agreement, and matters gets postponed. But finally, I just want to say, I think at the end of the day, it is the judge, magistrate, that needs to make sure that there's decorum in a court and that everyone's rights are looked after. I can fight for my client, but I need to respect the court. And the court has got a right to say to me, but you are me. When that happens, unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. But I can tell you, just think about yourself. If you have to sit there and someone is playing games all the time, is rude, what type of, how do you feel about that person? And that person also, the next client sees this. And yeah, so it is sometimes, I want to call it, it is strategic what you do in a court. Sure. It's not just, go to court. But okay, now Andre can talk about costs.
Go ahead, Andre.
So when the Legal Practice Act came into working, and with the regulations that were announced and promulgated, there's actually a provision in the Act that states that you have to give your client cost estimates for all of the legal processes as your legal case goes on. And if you fail to do that, you could be guilty of misconduct, which could lead to you being scrapped off the roll or struck off the roll, and which has happened now recently with Advocate Tefu. In the same sense, a judge or a magistrate can make an order that an attorney who is negligent in such a manner that they've aggrieved the court and made the court so angry that attorney is not allowed to recover any fees from their client, and that attorney, it's called costa bonis proprius, must pay those fees out of their own pocket. So there are mechanisms at play that tries to fight this, but like Stefanie says, it is still a game that people play, and they are strategic. And the normal argument is just that if the prejudice that the other party will suffer is so much greater that it cannot be remedied by an applicable cost order, that the postponements should not be allowed. But if the postponement can be remedied by a cost order, then the court will grant that postponement. Unfortunately, I've only once seen a court refusing a postponement where cost was tendered, and that was on an eviction. So it's not applicable to what we do. Yeah.
Stefanie, a final question: are you happy with the costs orders granted in OUTA's favor in the cases that you have fought in?
Yes, I think we are proud that our papers were drafted in a way that we can ask for the cost orders. We were, for example, in the Dudu matter, we were given costs, so one can work with that. Interesting to see what's going to happen in the whole ETOL thing, because we still need to sort that out. I think that is our way of repurposing the money that we spend.
Sure.
Like I said, we spend it carefully because we have a duty towards everybody to do, and all our supporters, to spend it responsibly. But if we can get it back, that means that, we can show our supporters that we are responsible, and now we can use that money for the next case that's going to be important. So that, although there's that mechanism, it is not about making money, it's about recouping money so that we can use
more
it
in the war
again
chest.
and
Yeah.
again. And again, yes.
Got it. Advocates Stefanie Fick and Andre Jennings have kicked off the show this evening with a lot of legal talk around legal costs. I hope you've been able to keep up with it. I've been there and thereabouts for the last half an hour or so. Let's move into the next bit of our conversation. Wayne Duvenage will join us in about 10 minutes. By the way, we'll be talking about the OUTA Business Breakfasts. But let's chat about the National Lottery Commission. And the NLC and its shenanigans have featured quite a lot in the media over the last couple of weeks. And corruption at the NLC seems to have come a long way. And the fight against it perhaps come a long way too. And OUTA has played a role in exposing this. Let's talk to Brendan Slade now, legal project manager at OUTA. The lawyers are on board tonight. Brendan, why don't you give us a breakdown of where OUTA became involved and OUTA's involvement in fighting corruption at the lottery? Evening to you.
Right, cool. Hi, Tom, and hi again to all the supporters out there. Just to tie in with Andre and Stefanie's conversation, although litigation is very crucial from a civil society perspective and it must be done, that is unfortunately not the only means of tackling corruption. Although we would love to go to court, believe you me, we would like to hold them accountable through the court, but we also do investigations, and through the investigations we expose and hold people accountable through that as well. So on the issue of the NLC, as far back as 2019, we received whistleblower information and information from other sources indicating, listen guys, there is something wrong with NLC beneficiaries. So we dug in, we got our investigation team together, and we went to Limpopo. So what we investigated in Limpopo back then was the complete collapse of sanitation buildings and toilets that were destined to be constructed for schools and for small children, toddlers. So back in those years, can I say 2019, I don't know if everybody recalls a big narrative, a big issue about children falling into pit latrines.
Yeah.
I know some toddlers died back then as well. And this was very bad for us. And we literally touched the surface, and we came to the conclusion these projects were funded for, the money was there, but the projects were never completed. So once we scratched that surface, we obviously got additional information, and we discovered there's a much bigger network going on within the NLC than just toilets not being built. And through that, we started investigations. into various aspects of corruption and maladministration within the NLC. And this is where we are today. Would love to go into some more detail.
Yeah, tell us, what did you find and what action has OUTA taken against individuals at the NLC?
So thus far, Tom, although it was around 3 years ago when we laid the criminal complaints as well, during the height of COVID-19, we laid 2 criminal complaints against these criminal networks. They are currently still under investigation by the SAPS. And we also lodged a complaint with the SAICA, that is the South African Institution for Chartered Accountants, because the COO at the time, Philemon Letwaba, obviously held the office as a chartered accountant. So any conduct which he allegedly commits to being a criminal conduct in terms of our criminal complaints are in the same breath misconduct in terms of the professional body's rules and regulations. Unfortunately, we haven't seen any of these investigations come to fruition yet, but hold on to your seats. Accountability is coming. We are seeing that all over the show with the arrests from previous ESCOM executives. We just read earlier this week about investigations on Transnet, arrests there as well. So the pendulum is swinging. Sit back. Everything will work out. We don't need to be hasteful on this.
Well, I've been looking in the media and they've been reporting on some action being taken against some individuals. Give us the latest news.
So the latest news is obviously the SIU, the Special Investigative Unit, got a proclamation recently where they were to investigate the shenanigans between 2016 and 2020. So in terms of that proclamation, they conducted their investigation, and they then worked together with the Asset Forfeiture Unit, and they recently got a preservation order to the sum of 25 million rand. So on the one hand, we would love to see the prosecution by the NPA. You need to be held accountable in that aspect. But on the other hand, there's also money lost, and money lost for that should have been used for worthy causes, for drug rehabilitation center in this instance. So just to go into detail about what exactly that preservation order entailed is, according to the investigative journalists and ground up that did the investigation, it is for the freezing of assets of 25 million rand. And it's for 9 luxury properties, a BMW, and for 2 Ocean Basket franchises owned by various culprits in this instance. It's ridiculous. We would have thought, fish and chip shop also come into the fray. Yeah. That's how bad the network goes.
How widespread do you think corruption is at the NLC, Brendan?
It's rooted. It's become institutionalized, unfortunately. But we have seen a turnaround in NLC leadership. Investigations are being conducted. As far as we are aware, the SIU are working very hard together with other law enforcement agencies to make sure these people are held to account. But just to go into the culprits being so lax, them thinking they can get away with it, I'm going to share in the chat a link which the supporters, the OUTA viewers tonight can go and have a look, because the egos and the arrogance of these people who steal from the poor, who are guilty of corrupt activities, they get this as if it's a snowball. They think they will get away with it, they will continue, and then they stop wiping their footprints away. So they leave very, very small traces. But traces which in retrospect are very blatant for the naked eye. So what Ground Up did is they illustrated in this article I posted how the lawyer of the NLC forged bank statements, but they picked it up through the referencing of the VAT amount of 15% versus 14%. So the statement is dated in November 2016 or 2014, and they reflect a VAT amount of 15%, although we all know that VAT was only 15% from 2016. So that is how lax they become. And it's very nice to see investigative journalists do their job this thoroughly.
Yeah,
because
devil's
it's not
in the
only
details.
Exactly. It's not only civil society and people on the ground that play a role in addressing and holding people to account, but the exposure of this corrupt activities and this malpractice, that media has a very crucial role to play going forward. And I want to applaud a lot of investigative journalists out there for their wonderful work, not only with the NLC, but a lot of other work being done. Kudos to you out there.
What work do you still have to do as OUTA when it comes to the NLC? What happens now?
As I'm sitting here, we are currently busy with additional investigations. I cannot divulge too much about that right now, but I can assure you that there is more shenanigans than you may think. At this stage, it is our duty to continue to put pressure on the institutions to hold the people to account. I know that we have already laid criminal complaints, we've already laid a psycho complaint, and we will follow through with that until we cannot anymore. So first of all, we need to trust the process. We need the investigations to run their course, and we need to give the investigators and the NPA the benefit of the doubt in this instance. But what also needs to happen, and this is not only for OUTA, is big business has a role to play in addressing this kind of behavior by professionals. The regulatory bodies that are responsible for the conduct of their members, this includes attorneys, accountants, and so on. They also need to step up to the plate, take action, and not just sit back and collect membership fees without doing anything about it. Just on that note, on regulatory bodies, Ground Up, which is a media house which Raymond Joseph writes his articles for, they are taking the Legal Practice Council to court tomorrow. So this comes after a complaint was lodged with the Legal Practice Council against the conduct of Leslie Ramulifu. Ramulifu is the NLC's attorney. So the Legal Practice Council, a while back, they declined to take the matter further, citing lack of evidence. They aren't going to go after the suspension or the scrapping of Leslie Ramulifu. So because they do not have an appeal process, Ground Up has now taken them to court in order to have that refusal to prosecute in terms of their rules and regulations, to have that set aside. So that's something to look forward to. I'm sure you supporters out there will want to see, and the links will be on the airways tomorrow. So holding thumbs, everything goes well.
We'll be looking for that, and Brendan, looking forward to updates on the NLC as OUTA steams ahead on that particular project. Wayne Duvenage has joined us, and I wanted to ask Wayne, how does it make you feel, Wayne, when you look at this nonsense that goes on at the Lottery Commission, and you see professionals that ride along with the corruption? And as we just asked Brendan how widespread he feels it is, it seems as if it's very widespread inside the NLC. How do you feel as a South African when you look at this rot?
Hi, Tom.
How's
it? To all our supporters and viewers there, it makes one very angry because one side of me says we wish we could just everybody stop participating in this shenanigans and giving them the money through the lottery process. But on the other hand, there are a lot of organizations that need this money and benefit from it. So the work that Ground Up and our team are doing is extremely important. It makes one very angry. You can see what happened in this last board that was there. These unsolicited grants that they give out, and it's all set up. And the sad thing is, when you talk to somebody like Ari Surlis, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, who was the CEO of Quad Para Association. These are people, quadriplegics. Their organization gets wheelchairs, gives them out to people in need, and so much more. I mean, not just that. And their donations were cut, by the National Lottery. Now, these organizations need those funds, and for them to cut it so that they can start giving themselves money It just makes one angry. And so, well done to those organizations. And I must say, the new board, we know a couple of the people on the board. I think they're going to turn it around. But then on the other hand, we've heard, through whistleblowers that there's still nonsense going on and contracts being, fast-tracked before the December elections because they're concerned about changes that might come and impact their ability to score contracts and things. So, there's a lot of work to do. Sad when it happens in the National Lottery Commission.
Yeah, it's disgusting that organizations like Quad Para that give wheelchairs to people who really need them don't get it, and then actresses are able to buy food franchises and houses for themselves out of the money that comes out of the lottery. It's actually despicable. Brendan also mentioned that business and professionals need to get on the bus now and stop playing to the corruption tune and to the corrupt. And to that end, Wayne, you've started, and OUTA started to convene business breakfasts, the first in a series titled On the Road to 2024. If we missed out on the business breakfast last week, what did we miss out on?
So just before I go there, Tom, I just want to say to Brendan, we must commend Raymond Joseph and the guys taking on the legal oversight body, because we've seen in the past they've been found very wanting and not wanting to hold their own to account. There are many unscrupulous legal firms and lawyers that rip the system off, rip the road accident fund off. I mean, we've had our headbutts with a couple of legal people who are dipping their fingers into the SABC pot under the Zuma days. So, and laying complaints, they just look away. They don't like it. SAICA was also very uncomfortable to take on their chartered accountants. They're changing their tune now. So I think it's excellent. It's excellent that Ground Up, or the organization with Raymond Joseph. I didn't quite get the full story there, Brendan, but we've got to really, I think, put something out there to commend him. And I think we must call for more. And we must maybe even with Stefanie's clerk there, meet with them and ask them why they are so relaxed or laxed in their ability to hold lawyers to account, because they're not all angels. So coming back to our business breakfast, Sam and the team and ourselves decided that we need to have some real thought leadership conversations. We need to start allaying the fears that so often exist unnecessarily in the business world around defending our democracy. You've got the faith-based movements, you've got the politicians, and they're a breed of their own, and they're obviously all in it for 2024. We've got civil society, and we've got business themselves. Those are the main sectors, and the media, obviously, and a number of others that have an influence, that have a role to play in changing this country. We cannot have the same old. It can't be business as usual when 2024 comes. And what are those tough discussions? And what we did last week was start having that conversation. Why is there this fear in business to support anything that holds government to account? And we see it. We see it all the time. We see this absolute fear of business to challenge government, to take them on head on. And there have been times, Rule Causa and Paul Harris and others have stuck their heads above the parrot and criticized government. But my goodness, did they get slapped into shape and warned by their boards and threatened, by the way, by government of audits and struck off procurement roles and all of that. Now, that type of bullying, you have to stand up to government on that. You have to fight back. And we don't say individuals even need to put their brands on the line here. There are organizations, associations, the Banking Association of South Africa, the South African Insurance Industry Association, the list goes on, the Steel Federation, the mining charters. All of these entities have big groupings which have independent individuals running them. Those are the individuals that need to start challenging government. But what happens is they're not allowed to, because the members of those associations, those business chambers and that, pull them back, hold their reins in and say, don't do that, because all 15 of our companies or 30 or whatever are going to be, lambasted, and we're going to feel the wrath of government. Well, I think those days now need to be over. I think business needs to grow a spine, and business needs to start challenging government where they get it horribly wrong. I'm not talking about going to pick a fight for no reason. Government gets it horribly wrong very often. And if we look at where the opportunities are, they are there. And we keep saying little things like, you pay a skills development levy, Mr. Businessman, every one of you, right the way through to business leadership members, BUSA, and all of that. You pay this levy. Do you know what you are paying? Do you know what's happening in the SETAs? Do you know what's happening to you? Do you think this country gets a bang for its buck on the skills development levy or the compensation fund? Do you know what's going on? And if you don't want to know, if you just think this is a tax you must just pay and look away and don't ask questions, you are remiss as a business leader. You are out of line. You need to start getting your captains of industry and big organizations to start asking the questions.
Does business care, Wayne? Does business care about corruption in South Africa?
They say they care, and they talk the talk, but they don't walk it, sadly. They should be investigating. They should be researching this stuff. They should be meeting at NEDLAC, meeting with the unions, meeting with government and saying, what is going on here? If you just have to look at trends, it's easy. 15 years ago, this is what was happening in the skills development levy. This is the X amount of people, the learnerships that turned out. Today, it's half of that. This is where the money is being wasted. It's not rocket science. And, we say to these institutions, we will do this work. We are doing this work. So help us, because we need to employ more researchers, project managers, investigations. And there's this silence. There's this, imagine, and this I was told by somebody the other day, we have a fear, Wayne, that if OUTA, just the name OUTA, appears on our bank statements as a donation to you, and somebody in government finds it, we are going to get into trouble. We are going to be audited. We are going to have the wrath of government. And I just look at an individual like that and I say, well, that's sad. But that's fine. Have your fear. It's unfounded, but have your fear. And then you get the other side of the coin, where we were speaking to a businessman, and he said, what's the worst that can happen to us? We can lose 8% of our business, which is what we do with government. That's a risk we're prepared to take. We're actually now hurtful. We're fed up. We don't mind losing that 8%. We need to have this discussion in the EXCO, and we need to start supporting civil society, and not just OUTA. So there's so many good civil society organizations. We need to do something different, because if we keep looking away, if we keep ignoring the issues and not tackling government head on our gross maladministration that's taking place, we won't have a country to do business in soon. And 2024 is elections less than 18 months away, is the opportunity for change. I'm not saying go and support political parties or whatever you want to do. It's about making sure there's a few big caveats here. One of them is the research shows that the higher the percentage voting poll, the lower the ANC's win will be. Now think about it, because people are fed up. The normal electorate that voted in the past 10, 15, 20 years ago for the ANC are not voting because they're disillusioned. But they're also disillusioned by the options. They don't like the EFF, the populists. They're concerned about the DA. So they don't vote. And the voter levels drop, and the ANC keeps its percentage. But if that goes up and we start educating our staff, our workers, and their kids, and we start putting out and supporting education programs, this is just one idea for business, that tells people this is why it's important to vote. And just vote for the least bad. Vote with your conscience. Vote because there needs to be change of some sort. What that is, you decide. And when that happens, you see the natural aversion is away from the ANC. Now that strengthens opportunities for coalitions. It even strengthens, by the way, opportunities to keep the EFF and the ANC combined voter numbers below 50%. if you get that number high enough, the voting turnout. Now imagine that. And now yes, we understand there's challenges in coalition politics. We see it in Joburg and the Ekurhuleni and others. But that's no reason to not go down this road. We have to go through this painful experience. We have to learn. We have to form more robust coalition agreements. The parties that take over control can't have it all. They've got to share it with their coalition partners. And that's what I think the DA are starting to learn now. So we're paying expensive school fees, but that's what excites me. There's this opportunity. But if business, a big component, pays over VAT, pays over the PAYE, pays over the company's taxes and that, I'm not saying have a tax revolt. I'm saying use your muscle, kick down the doors of the ministers and the various, and don't mean that literally, demand your time and spell it out to them. There are things that are fundamentally wrong, and we can't tolerate this anymore. And I just don't get it, Tom. I don't get it. It's frustrating.
It seems as if, and I'm trying not to make blanket and big statements as we talk about this, but sometimes it seems as if big business just doesn't care. Like, where's the care and the concern?
Yeah, I think they do, but they, it's this convenience, it's this learned apathy, it's this, somebody else will do it, and
it's the ultimate sticking your head in the sand, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's also, I think we need a rethink. We need to look at what is our. Are we just beholden to our shareholders or our stakeholders? What I mean by that is
community stakeholders as well. Yeah,
your citizens, your employees, their future, their homes. Where we are saying to government and business, it's bigger than profits as usual. And I don't think it's. You're right. We can't paint a blanket, tar everybody with the same brush. There are a lot of businesses. There are lots, thousands that are doing right. But I don't think it's 10%. I don't think it's 20 or 30% of businesses out there, and we need a change of attitude. We need not just a change. Okay, well, let's look at it. We need a step to a radical shift where business says we have to get involved to fix this country now. And what is that? They need to meet with civil society. They need to meet with journalists, other role players. We need to have some tough conversations. And that was the purpose of that conversation last week.
And how did it go, Wayne?
It was a good conversation. It was nice. We had great speakers with Lakona Mguni and the ex-strategy lass, her name escapes me now, from BLSA, Kaya Sitole, and Mark Barnes from the post office, the ex-post office. He's been in banking, investment, and in the government with the post office and back out again. Really some great insights were shared, and all had the common view that it cannot be business as usual, and we need to now start having the tough conversations. Yeah. And I'm engaging more and more with the business leaders out there on this topic, and they understand, they acknowledge it. By the way, they know. And the beauty is as well, we're engaging with the business leadership schools, Gibbs and Henley and others. And I must say, we must have John Foster Pedley on our show.
Yeah, he's fantastic, isn't he? Yeah,
he's a maverick.
Yeah,
and he talks about business activism, and that's what we need. So yeah, that's the type of thing we need. We need to have those conversations. And how do we train and teach and bring executives into this mindset of it cannot just be our bottom line and screw the planet, screw society.
Yeah. Gee whiz, as you talk about mindset, it seems as if we need a mindset change in all sectors and levels of South Africa to eliminate or get rid of corruption.
Well, you see, getting rid of corruption is one thing. So that's a whole initiative on its own. I think little things like, imagine if we had an employment list of good, honest people who blew the whistle, and were great for your organization. Accountants, chartered accountants, treasury people, these guys that have picked up the nonsense. And the question I have for big businesses, why aren't you snapping these people up? Why aren't you bringing them in? And few that we've had the conversations with say, but we worry they're going to come in and rabble-rouse. And then we said, no, they won't. That's not, all they did was expose gross wrongdoing. And if you were the chairman of a company, you would want those people. You would want them in your organization. You would actually bring them in and say, sniff it out.
That's right.
Tell me where there's corruption and nonsense going on here. We don't want to be one of those companies. But there's this mindset of, no, I'm flabbergasted.
Well, if anybody can hold the carrot and the stick, so to speak, to business in South Africa, it's you, Wayne Duvenage. You've been on both sides of the fence.
There's lots of others, and we're having some lovely engagements. We've got work to do, Tom, in that space. But I must say, that it's not everybody's in that boat, but we've got to get some what we call moral courage into the business world to say we are going to, we give 1% of our revenue or profits to skills development. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. If I was big business, I'd be going to government and say, look, we can see you struggling with supporting whistleblowers and getting your corruption. So tell you what, Mr. Government, and we can see the skills development levy and all this money being wasted. We're going to take 1% of our revenue, if you don't mind. We're going to channel that to an anti-corruption forum. We understand, Mr. President, you've got your national anti-corruption councils and you're doing your work there. But we're going to take some of this, if you don't mind, and we're going to invest it in a proper whistleblower protection program, making whistleblowing easy, getting information, investigations, and we're going to build cases and help the National Prosecuting Authority, and we're going to bring corruption to its knees. What do you think, Mr. President? He has the plan, Mr. President. What do you think he'll say? He'll say, he can't say no. That's the conversation we want business to have. And then we will change things, because let me tell you, you take 1% of business's revenue, my goodness, we could do a ton of it. 0.5%, a tenth of
it. It sounds like you're all fired up over this, Wayne.
Yes, because I think this is the start of change. This is the start of a conversation. This is the start of conscience stroking and new processes and things that I think we will light the fires on and start getting conversations going. Yeah. So I get excited about it because of the possibility. And I also get excited about it because of what can happen in 2024. And then I get excited about prosperity levels rising at growth rates of 5, 6, 7, even double digit percentages. Now that's always got to look at what's possible. And if that's the dream and it's not an insurmountable, then we've got to go there. And we've got to do everything between now and then to get there. If we miss the 2024 boat, I don't think this country will last another 5 years under the ANC rule. It cannot.
Well, you've got more of these gatherings, the business breakfasts, and I'm sure you'll let us know how they're going as we go along, and perhaps we'll be speaking more about how business can get involved in the fight against corruption and create a more ethically and morally stable South Africa on future shows. Thank you, Wayne. Good to see you on the screen tonight. And thank you to our team that were on just before Wayne. We're talking about Brendan Slade, Advocate Stefanie Fick, and Andre Jennings. Thank you to you all for being on the show this evening. They're waving goodbye to you now. And thank you to you for joining us on the OUTA Hour. We've run a few minutes behind or over, but I was just keen to hear what Wayne had to say about the push to get business on board in the fight against corruption. I hope you were too, and you've enjoyed the show. I saw a couple of happy birthdays popping along the screen. I'm glad. Actually, Samantha van Nispen and Masego Mtsoneng and Devanie David said that they were going to sing happy birthday to me at the beginning of the show, but they disappeared. They disappeared faster than a National Lotteries Commissioner who's been building restaurants. They were gone. But thank you for the wishes on the screen. It was indeed my birthday yesterday. I turned 50 years old and very happy to be around 50 years later. I'll be back with you again next week at 7 p.m. for another OUTA Hour with the OUTA team and guests. Hope you'll join us for the live show. If you're watching post-live, thank you for pressing that play button inside South Africa and many people who watch it from outside of our shores. I hope you have a wonderful week full of money, full of love, full of happiness and joy and kindness. Don't forget to join us next week, 7 p.m. for another date on the OUTA Hour. Don't be late. Until then, I miss you already.
Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The OUTA Hour, where your voice matters.